The Three Kingdoms period. It spawned movies, TV shows, comic books, board games, video games, anime, robots. Why is it everywhere? What is it even about? Why is this famous novel called a romance? Well, today, we'll try to answer all of those questions by diving into that very novel, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and explaining why it's so timeless. Was it the fantastic fights, the intense twists, the crazy games of 4D chess before 4D chess was even a thing? Or maybe it was actually this weird romance thing? Let's find out. The Three Kingdoms period occurred as a result of the collapse of the Han Dynasty in around 200 AD. The country split into various warring factions, which consolidated into three major powers until they were ultimately reunified to become the Jin Dynasty in 280 AD. The famous novel retelling these events, The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, was written over 1,000 years later and became an enduring cornerstone of Chinese culture as one of China's four great classical novels. Of course, some things were then dramatized, exaggerated, or perhaps made up entirely. But nothing is more confusing than the number one question. Why in the world is it called a romance? Well, actually, romance is a more archaic Western literary term, referring to medieval tales of knights and chivalry, which, I guess, isn't completely wrong, but it's definitely a little misleading. The actual Chinese name, 三国演义, means something more like Three Kingdoms performing righteousness, or Three Kingdoms demonstrating righteousness. San means three, guo means countries or kingdoms, yan means to act or to perform, and yi, well, most people translate it as loyalty. But technically speaking, loyalty is zhong. Yi is a much more vague term, but it's more like a moral code of righteousness, sacrifice, and loyalty. To illustrate the difference, here's a Chinese etymology lesson. The character zhong is made up of two parts, zhong and xin. Zhong means center, and xin means heart. So basically, zhong is to always have something or someone at the center of your heart, hence loyalty. On the other hand, yi is also made up of two parts, but these are yang and wo. Yang means sheep, and wo means me. In Chinese culture, sheep are symbols of kindness and righteousness. And well, you can do the math. Kindness and righteousness is me. Chivalry is in the ballpark of yi, but it's not really the same thing. So perhaps you could consolidate all of that as, bear with me, being a bro. You know, being a good brother or a sister is to be loyal, fair, honorable, and just, generally good to others. And that's roughly what yi means. This yi thing, though, is exactly why the book and this entire era is such a big deal. Not only were there these cunning conspiracies, bombastic battles, and mythic mind games, but it was also a spectacular stage for valiant heroes to demonstrate the everlasting virtues of being upstanding and noble. In the course of 800,000 words, in 120 chapters, with almost 1,000 different characters, it's a very difficult read, even for Chinese people. That's why we're going to save you that trouble and attempt to summarize this masterpiece using some of the most dramatic examples of yi. First, the book's protagonists. It was 184 AD, and as we know, the Han was collapsing. A poor, distant, but direct relative to the ruling family called Liu Bei wanted to live up to his name and preserve the dynasty. He came across like-minded warriors, Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, and the three of them really, and I mean really, hit it off. They swore an oath of brotherhood to protect the nation, defend the people together, and prayed to the heavens to ultimately die together as the greatest bros of all time. This event was called the Peach Garden Oath, since it, well, happened in Zhang Fei's peach garden. And they set off to be on the right side of history and save the world, staying fiercely dedicated to each other and the Han until the bitter end. In the meantime, the capital, which was in north-central China, was a total mess because government officials, intelligent as they are, hired the literal embodiment of chaotic evil, a rogue general called Zhuo, to stop the uprisings. And, with the help of his ruthless bodyguard-turned-adopted son, he took the opportunity to take over the entire empire instead. This made a lot of people very angry and was widely regarded as a bad move. Some of these people, like Liu Bei, gathered armies and became warlords in order to take down the usurpers and save the Han. But most of them, unlike Liu Bei, just use patriotism as an excuse to vie for power. Try as they might though, in the end, Zhuo was only killed by his bodyguard over a very, very pretty girl. Those two were clearly not true bros. The resulting power vacuum left the two top warlords, Yuan Shao and Cao Cao, to duke it out for supremacy. Yuan Shao was this really strong guy with a huge army, but not a lot of conviction. Cao Cao, on the other hand, was a genius, a cunning, clever, and capable genius who definitely wanted power. How badly did he want power? Well, he has this famous quote, 宁叫我负天下人，休叫天下人负我. I would rather betray the world than let the world betray me. Talk about cold. This thirst for power would make him the book's primary antagonist against our virtuous brothers, Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei, all still relatively nobodies at the time. Those three switched sides here and there, but eventually got separated and lost contact. Liu Bei ended up leading troops under Yuan Shao, while Guan Yu was captured by Cao Cao. Zhang Fei, nobody really knows what happened to him. Cao Cao, having a keen eye for talent though, really admired Guan Yu for being a serious fighter and an even more serious bro, and asked him to join his side. How is he a serious bro? Well, here's our first major demonstration of Yi. Guan Yu hesitantly agreed with the condition that Cao Cao allow him to leave once he found where Liu Bei was. Cao Cao accepted those terms, but kept offering him gifts of girls and gold to try and buy him off, but nothing could sway his heart. After defeating a major opponent for Cao Cao and finding out Liu Bei was on the other side, Guan Yu considered his debts repaid and rejoined his sworn brother, while not taking a single one of Cao Cao's gifts away with him, because brotherhood can't be bought. Cao Cao, as promised, let him go, even though on the way out, Guan Yu killed 6 generals who tried to fight him because they didn't get the memo. Don't get between a man and his bro. At that point, Liu Bei retreated south to a relative who was the governor of the large and rich Jing Province, smack dab in the center of China. And with Guan Yu's return, the 3 sworn brothers were finally reunited. Zhang Fei found his way there already somehow. The bro time didn't last long, because our genius, Cao Cao, soon defeated Yuan Shao and marched on this critical province, which surrendered immediately. Liu Bei had to gather everyone up and run away again. And here happened another epic instance of Yi. In the chaos, he lost track of his wife, infant son, and one of his generals, Zhao Yun. Some worried that the general had deserted, but Liu Bei believed in his man, and sure enough, it turned out that Zhao Yun had silently ridden back through enemy lines to look for them, alone, 7 times, each time single-handedly taking out anyone and everyone that got in his way until he finally found the baby, tied him to his chest, and then single-handedly fought all the way back to Liu Bei. What a bro. Liu Bei and his forces, along with Guan Yu, Zhang Fei, and Zhao Yun, settled in a safe location and painstakingly negotiated an alliance against Cao Cao with the warlord of southeastern China, Sun Quan. Until now, Sun Quan mostly just hung out in his kingdom, away from all the craziness up north. Now that Cao Cao was at his doorstep, he didn't have a lot of options. Together with Liu Bei, they now had about 50 to 60,000 troops. But Cao Cao had somewhere between 2 to 500,000. However, thanks to Liu Bei's mastermind strategist, Zhuge Liang, they were able to outwit Cao Cao at the Battle of Red Cliff with a whole series of legendary schemes: spy sabotage, false intel, fake desertions, mind games, epic deception, and a dab of sorcery here and there. The works. Cao Cao's army was utterly decimated, and he was forced to limp back to the north with only a few dozen soldiers at his side. But not before being blocked by Guan Yu, who, as we know, really lived by this Yi thing. Yi, while representing loyalty and brotherhood, also represents righteousness. And Guan Yu, being such a righteous man, couldn't kill the beleaguered Cao Cao, even if doing so would end the war. Cao Cao had treated him so graciously in the past and had let him return to Liu Bei as promised. Being fair and righteous was more important than winning, so he returned the favor and let Cao Cao escape back to the north. After the Allied victory, Liu Bei moved his army back into Jing Province, but he and Sun Quan couldn't defeat Cao Cao before arguing over the strategic position themselves, and the alliance quietly fell apart. With their relationship soured, Sun Quan's forces ambushed Guan Yu on his way back from a failed attack on the north, and had him executed when he, in his last bro move and his last act of Yi, angrily refused to surrender, switch sides, and betray his bro, Liu Bei. His 2 brothers were absolutely devastated. All those years ago, when they swore brotherhood under those peach blossoms, the only thing they had asked of heaven and earth was to allow them to die together. But with this underhanded assassination, they couldn't even get that. Zhang Fei felt so helpless and upset that he lashed out at his own troops, which soon got him killed in a mutiny. And suddenly, Liu Bei was the only brother left. Consumed by his brotherly love, his anger, and all of his sorrow, he officially declared war on Sun Quan and launched an all-out offensive on him instead of Cao Cao. For honor, for justice, and for vengeance, the Cao Cao wretch could wait. Only then, after this point of no return and all of these powerful stories, did China actually officially break up into 3 kingdoms. Cao Cao led the kingdom of Wei, Sun Quan the kingdom of Wu, and Liu Bei the kingdom of Shuhan. Around 220 AD, Cao Cao and Liu Bei died, but their sons continued the stalemate with no end in sight. It was only until the year 249 when Sima Yi, a very clever Wei advisor, led his family to eventually overthrow the Caos and then conquer Shuhan in 263 and Wu in 280. With China reunified, the Jin Dynasty was born, and thus ended the 3 Kingdoms period. And that's how the power of Yi defined this chaotic century. Flashy fights and thrilling power struggles might be fun to watch, but it's the eternal virtues of righteousness, loyalty, and brotherhood that have people coming back to this epic era time and time again, all the way to this day. In the end, after the dust settles, a big fancy army is nowhere near as important as a few true bros. So, what do you think is the best English title? Romance of the Three Kingdoms? Bromance of the Three Kingdoms? Something else entirely? Leave your suggestions in the comments below and let me know if there are any specific stories you'd like me to talk about. Until next time, be sure to cherish your bros and your sisters. 再见! If you enjoy the deeper meaning behind Chinese culture, folklore, legends, and strange true stories, then come explore more with me on Jared Tells Tales, where mystery, meaning, and the otherworldly still live on. Click the link to watch your first tale.